welcome back to Wilde Speculations. I'm Daniel.
I'm Scott.
Tonight we are talking about Critical Role Campaign 3, Episode 30, Reunion and Revelation.
Yes. Encounter.
So, there's a lot I want to talk about the encounter that they had. But I want to celebrate the opening of the episode before we get there. Lots of callbacks in the opening 40 minutes of the episode. As they approach the cliff, they don't see a bridge. And we get an Aladdin moment. Do you trust me?
I don't know. I love that.
So good. So Matt gave quite a visceral description of this bridge. And all I could think about is pictures from India that I've seen, or pictures and videos from South America, and some of the Andean bridges.
I was going to say I got some South America vibes.
Yeah.
I'm actually getting some South America vibes from the whole continent.
Yeah.
At least what we've seen in Campaign 3 thus far.
With the jungles and stuff. Yeah. I definitely see that. But it was like, you've been there, probably. Like, the feeling I got was like, I'm watching, I was like, you've been on one of these. And as he's describing it, as it goes down and the wave travels down the bridge and then returns.
Yeah.
The little physicist in my heart was so happy. Because that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And so good. Also evoking ideas of Galloping Gertie. The Puget Sound, I think. The bridge that you always see, the concrete and steel bridge doing this.
Yeah.
Made me think of that. And I love Laura. I throw up in my mouth a little bit. And Matt using his, I don't want to call them battle scars, but the marks of his time in the dust of the desert. Although I think he pegged his honeymoon as the source of his sunburnt scars, and not Burning Man. And I would probably argue it was probably Burning Man. It's just he didn't notice them until after his honeymoon. Usually we don't notice sunburn scars like that until suddenly we have something, and then we notice, and then that's what we associate with, when really it's been happening.
Yeah.
A long time. But yeah. They get waylaid by a crawler gang.
Yeah. Or how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb.
It's funny, I have been so much Doctor Strange left the last month. In various places, different things, keeps coming up. But yes. So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about the encounter.
Yeah.
Is the bomb. Great play by Imogen.
Yep.
So good. And like, I want to give Laura MVP for the
She definitely
encounter.
was for the battle, yeah.
Yeah, just starting with that. Now, do you think... I don't think it did enough damage to the leg.
Okay.
I think it was 8d6 he had him roll, if memory serves.
Okay.
Not that the 8d6 is wrong, because that's about what a fireball is. It's a significant amount of damage.
Yeah.
But the reason I say I don't think it did enough damage is because they asked for this bomb to be able to blow up a wall. So it should have done, and like I always, not always, but like if it's going to be an explosive device designed to take out structures, it's going to do double damage to structures.
Yeah.
Or objects, and
Yeah.
I don't think he factored that in.
No. But
I also think he may have been on the flip side of that. He also may have been kinder to Ashton and Chetney going up and slashing at this thing.
Yeah.
He seems to have statted it as a creature as opposed to a vehicle.
Yeah.
So maybe that enters into it. But my thought process was metal legs, vehicle should have a damage threshold that they're not going to get through.
Yeah.
So, on one hand, I disagree with how Matt handled the bomb. But on the other, he let them do the damage to the limbs.
Yeah.
So, but the other big puzzle is Imogen's next big moment. When she lightning bolts the cannon.
Yeah.
And it ignites all the gunpowder stuff up there.
Yep.
Because she points out, and that's why she wanted to do it, it's going to ignite all the gunpowder. And I'm unsure why Matt... Well, okay, so in the moment, I was really unsure why Matt adjudicated that the results of that the way that he did. Where everyone on the field out in front of it was going to face 5 attacks at disadvantage.
Yeah.
That is a long, cumbersome process to get through.
Yeah.
When I think if his decision of how this thing works is that everyone down there is going to face blast or something. Dexterity save for half. And that's going to be the base damage of the weapon. Is what they're facing.
I mean, you could do it that way, but that guarantees everyone's taking damage.
Yes.
This way, not everyone takes damage.
Mathematically, everyone's going to take damage the way that he did it. Even if the attacks are at disadvantage, you're more than likely going to be hit. Which brings to mind another way that he could have adjudicated it.
Right.
Which is the minion rules in the DMG.
Okay.
The minion rules in the DMG say, and this has to do with, you have PCs, super high armor class.
Right.
They're fighting a bunch of low CR creatures that have a very low bonus to hit. It's the math that you do to say how many of them have to attack that player to get a hit. Basically, to roll a 10 to hit the character. And he could have done that.
Yeah. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with the way he did it. Just because it's not what you or I would do doesn't mean. And I don't think it was unfair or...
I don't think it was unfair either. I don't know. I think it's. I always like talking about how Matt does things, because it's an example we all can see.
Right.
There's definitely the argument that the way he did it was added more tension for sure.
Yeah. There's more tension, and yes, mathematically, like statistically, they were probably all going to take in, but there is a chance that someone would take none. You know.
Yeah. But then they're like the other side. So the reason
that's a cool story moment, and you'd be like, "Yeah, that thing blew up in our faces," and I walked away without getting hit.
So Matt and the characters were not in a position to get a good look at the gun.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounded almost like these were rockets. Like, that's how my brain can reconcile the effect that happened. Because if ammunition cooks off in a magazine, it just blows up.
Okay.
Only what's in the barrel, what's in the chamber, is going to send the round down the barrel. If it's a bullet casing, if it's supposed to work like that, only thing inside there is going to go that way.
Okay.
Everything else is just going to blow up.
Okay.
But if it's a rocket, which, based on some of the things that Matt was saying, sounds like it might have been.
Mm-hmm.
And Cargreave rockets in the 18th century basically work kind of like they're just like in tubes and they all launch off like that.
Okay.
Or the Hwacha, Korean siege weapon. But the reason why I say in the moment I didn't understand, but then later did, is because as Matt was trying to figure out how he's going to adjudicate this, because he hadn't thought about it, it's obvious by his reaction that he hadn't thought about it. Travis said something about it all firing, or whatever was firing at him. And I think as Matt sort of, whatever he was looking at, Travis said that, and then he seemed to calm a little bit, or change, his body language changed to where now he's not looking for how. He's like, okay, I have what's going to happen. Now it's figuring out what the damage is going to be and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think that was just in the moment. Travis said that. If it comes from the players, idea comes from the players. Hey, that's a good idea. We're going to do that.
Yep.
Whether that was the original plan or not.
Yep.
Hey, I'm doing that. That's player expectation met.
Yep.
So I think that's the real reason Matt ended up doing it that way.
Oh yeah, that definitely is what hit that idea. But that's just good DMing.
Yeah. But yeah.
It's like that meme of the guy taking the test. It's all players' anticipation of what will happen, and the guy DM making his notes for the campaign.
Yes, the Mr. Bean meme. Yeah. And see, I would argue that the bigger moment of tension happened with Vitriolic Sphere.
Okay.
especially when FCG went down.
Yeah.
They healed him, which let's enjoy the kick open his mouth and throw the healing potion in so it shatters.
I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Which is kind of a callback, if you think about it, to when Nott jammed the healing potion into Caleb's mouth in Campaign 2. Just, and there was some joking about did it chip any teeth. But yeah, that was funny. And then the healer going down, and he gets back up, and he goes to, I cast Cure. Oh, I don't have Cure Wounds prepared.
Yeah, which was a callback in the because Laura's like, wait, you're a cleric and you don't have
a healer without Cure Wounds? What kind of healer are you? Yeah, so good. He's like, oh, I have Healing Word. And the return of the confusion over FCG's empathy sharing damage thing that he does, where he gets the temporary hit points.
Yes.
I think he can add those, or he takes damage.
Well, we got clarification on that. We now know that he either has to take damage to get rid of them.
Yes.
You know.
Or they just act as damage.
Or
which we determined that, but that it took Sam until now to grasp that, I think, is the sad part.
I just want the two subclasses to be released. I want to see them.
I mean, I definitely empathize with Matt when he's talking about designing subclasses or classes and having it on stream.
Yeah.
And the mountains of feedback that come back.
I mean, my thought is that he's always released them.
Yes. My
thought is that he's saving them because whenever Darrington Press puts out the Marquette source book.
Yes.
Or
sure.
Wizards of the Coast, whichever does it, because they still have one more book with Wizards of the Coast. Because when they announced Explorer's Guide, they said they had a 3-book deal, and they've done that and called it the Nether deal. So they still have one more book in the 3-book deal with Wizards. That'll be an official D&D release. I think they didn't do the Tal'Dorei Reborn through them because of
Green Ronin. Well, that was the Green Ronin license.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
And when is it going to come out?
Not until after the new Player's Handbook, DMG, and Monster Manual. It will probably be in that.
If it's a Wizards, definitely.
Yeah. If it's Darrington Press, probably not until they're in the final arc.
Which
so you've got
brings us
70 episodes.
Which brings us something. Well, we'll talk about that near the end because I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, things are ramping up way too quickly. That where we're going right now feels like when we were getting ready to go into Aver, when we were getting ready to, the right before the final arc. And I'm wondering, is this going to be a shorter campaign? Is this only going to be an 80 episode? Because he's already got the ticking time clock. Can he spread that over the next 90, 100 episodes?
Oh, yeah.
For a month?
Oh, yeah.
A month and 100 episodes.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's going to be way quicker. A month doesn't pass in 100 episodes. A month passes like in 20 episodes.
But think of Vox Machina. If you subtract all the downtime, the adventuring time was only a couple months. And if you look in the DMG,
each arc was a couple of months.
In the DMG, adventuring XP per day or whatever. If you go by that, you're going to be 20th level in like 60 days.
I don't know. It feels like each arc is like a couple of months.
Yeah. But I don't... So, I think one of the things that he learned from Brennan and is going to use here is whatever's going to happen on the Apogee Solstice is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it was going to happen whether they got to this point or not.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes me sad in the sense that I was hoping they would have something to do with the breaking of the Divine Gate.
Right. Yeah. And Snoopy, yes, I understand this is just Arc 1, but the way the episodes are going, it feels like in Arc 3 when we're setting up for the final arc.
And here's why.
Rather than Arc 1 where we're setting up for Arc 2 in the past.
Here's why. It's sort of double layered. First, Matt has woven everybody's backstory way tighter in this campaign. And not only tighter amongst them, but into the overarching plot he has.
I mean, either it's going to be what I'm saying is either it's going to be a much shorter campaign, or this whole Ruidus thing is a red herring. It's not the main plot of the campaign.
Oh, it is.
Not if it's going to, whatever's going to happen happens in a month.
So one of the things that a lot of people are saying that they wished about Calamity is they had more of it. What happens after?
You think we're going into Calamity too?
I don't want to term it that. Because I think it's potentially Calamity 2. Or, put it to you this way. Was the gods returning to Krynn a repeat of the fall of Ishtar?
It was the inverse of the fall of Ishtar.
And that's what I think. That's what I
Okay.
think. The collapse of the Divine Gate, divinity returns to Exandria.
Okay, so you think it's more a War of the Lands setup?
I think so.
Okay.
And that's why I think...
These are some odd heroes of the Lands.
Because this is very much set up as Act 1. Because, you know, the first 10 to 12 episodes, we're getting to know everybody. And Travis is going through his characters.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it both feels like they're ramping up for the final arc, and like the last 2 episodes, we've just hit the end of the prologue and are entering chapter 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like both of those combined.
And it's because Matt has done so much.
And you're right about the backstories, because like everyone's backstory has been hit hard already.
Yeah.
Whereas normally that's spread out over all 4 arcs.
Yeah. So, this being Act 1, you have to introduce your characters, you have to introduce the setting, then you have to introduce the conflict. And Matt's been peppering the conflict throughout as we've learned who the characters are and their connection to whatever he has planned.
Theoretically, he's been peppering this conflict since
the home game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since campaign 1, including like the Darrington Brigade one-shot.
Yeah.
With Quack Thulu.
Yes. So, one of the things we talked about last week is, and it's something that Laura mentioned in this episode, when they were talking to Ira, is I think it's a prison for a dead god. Or something to that effect is what she said. And that was our supposition.
Yes.
That the two gods that are missing from the pantheons are there. But now I don't think that's the case.
Okay, I was going to say, which I had another thought about. You had talked about the Luxon.
Yes.
We both talked about who the Raven Queen disposed. The other thought I had, now, most of these gods, Ray being the offshoot, yes, Rose, that would be interesting. And maybe possibly who she replaced. And this could fall into line with that as well. But the rest of the gods are pretty much based on Forgotten Realms gods.
Yeah.
They're direct correlations. Well, Saloon the Moonweaver in Forgotten Realms lore has a twin sister who is her mortal enemy, or immortal enemy, Shar the Night Singer.
Yeah.
So it could be Shar, or the Exandrian equivalent of Shar as well. And that's not saying that that's not who Ray disposed.
I think that's probably what it is.
Especially with it being the moons. They were both moon goddesses who were bitter enemies and twins.
So one of the things that came to me this episode at the end, as Matt is describing what Imogen sees looking through the telescope, and she sort of misinterprets it as ley lines. That's a description of the Divine Gate.
Very similar,
Matt
yes,
was
to the
giving.
weave, yeah.
Yeah.
And very similar in description to the Divine Gate.
We see through the clouds a city. I think, and we've previously talked about, and Matt also, that Ruidus came after the Divine Gate went up. Or as sort of in time with the Calamity.
Yep.
And there's all sorts of superstitions, which Matt has been very clear about. Some of them are BS. Some of them can be sort of true.
Yep.
There are misinterpretations of things.
Like what?
Yeah. And I think Ruidus is the place where the prime deities and the betrayer gods are. I think they're all there. And the flashes of Ruidus are a result of some conflict, of the conflict that's happening there.
Okay.
And whatever powers that be beyond that Divine Gate are trying to affect Exandria.
Interesting. That gives a whole Apocalypse New Genesis from DC Comics 5.
Yeah.
Especially if the moon ends up actually splitting, because they talk about blowing up the moon, and one half of the betrayer gods, one half the prime deities, the new gods, and up that dark side in his crew.
And see, like, it's always seemed wrong that the prime deities could just build the Divine Gate, and that was the end.
Yeah.
To me, it's always felt like there was some of the betrayer gods that also wanted the Divine Gate to go up, for whatever reason they may have had. And likewise, I think there are members of the divine prime deities who want the gate to come down.
Oh, yeah.
So I think and that gives you this situation where you have Matt's version of Zariel, the fallen angel that's a general in the Nine Hells.
Yeah.
Because they felt that Celestia had a job in fighting the Abyss.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought Rose.
That is, it gives me more vibes of the campaign one with sealing away Vecna.
Yeah.
And then, but I see where Rose is coming from as well.
Yeah, and see, I think Matt has been placing a lot of seeds that the divine gate is going to come down.
Oh yeah, yeah. We've been on that for seems like ever now. I think before campaign 3 started, we talked about the divine gate coming down.
That was our posit for this campaign. Yeah. Also, the interesting thing, connecting it to Exandria Unlimited Calamity, that the solstice, the nexus, is going to happen somewhere on Marquette, with Ruidus in the sky. We also got from Exandria Unlimited that the flying cities, well, not Aor, Avalere. One of the things that it was doing while it was flying with the tree was scribing protection, keeping the primordials and the elemental planes separate,
right?
Keeping Exandria sort of its own thing. I think, and she, when Leyren turned the Layrite on, and Brennan describing it going up and sending them through many planes, disk evaporating them. I don't think it's an accident that Ruiz is coming over this nexus point. And I think it's going to be okay. I mentioned last week that I thought a level up was coming, based on number of episodes and just sort of the feel.
Yeah, and I still think it's coming.
Talked about how this feels kind of like an Act 1. They'll be going into Tier 2.
Yep.
So, if you look at it that Matt constructed his story, Act 1 is Tier 1, Act 2 is Tier 2, and Act 3 is Tier 3. Which means we probably, like last campaign, we may not get into Tier 4.
Yeah.
Depending on whether or not Matt wants to play around with the idea of divinity and one of the players ascending.
Who would you want it to be?
I think Orem might be the only one.
Snoopy says Orem.
Yeah.
I think Orem is best suited to be a god and handle that responsibility of the group. And I think Rose has a point that it seems like they're setting up either Imogen or Fern, especially with them both being Ruidus form. I think Asher would be the most fun as a god.
Yeah. But I mean, so here's the twist.
And Chetney if it's a betrayer god, because those are the evil ones.
Fern definitely being an archfey, I believe, for sure. But here's the potential twist to the story.
Okay. And then let's get back to the episode because I have 2 more theories directly involving the episode.
Okay. Matt wants to play with divinity, but campaign 1 characters are the ones who become deified.
Ooh.
Grog, Strongjaw, takes over for Cord. Because here's why I say...
Each of them the ones they were the champion for.
Uh-huh.
Vex for the Dawnfather. Pike for Rey.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
And here's why I say it. Here's why. We've talked about how all of the licensing between, broadcasting and everything, and the sticky stuff that that happens. If Matt uses Campaign 3 to break everything, do away with all the Forgotten Realm deities that he's ported over, the Pathfinder gods that he's ported over, throw it all out, and the new Pantheon are Campaign 1 champions, the hero of the Vox Machina.
Yeah. That's a good name for a Pantheon, too.
Right?
I like that. Okay. I'm fully on board with that.
And to me, Vox Machina have the more deific sort of legendary story.
Backs for the Raven Queen.
Yeah.
Ooh, the Dawnfather. The Dawn Mother and the Raven King are twins.
See?
The Dawn...
It writes itself.
I like that. I like that. And yeah, that is a good break so that Darrington Press can just fully encompass everything that they have and not have to worry about copyrights and...
Yep. And Bell's Hells could die and all become actual servants of hell. Yes. Yes.
Does that make the Mighty Nine the kind of neutral? Because, a lot of pantheons have the good, the bad,
good, neutral,
evil,
yeah.
Neutral.
Yeah.
Do we really want Scanlan taking the place of the Goddess of Knowing, though? It's Scanlan.
Now he just becomes the Patrick Stewart thing from...
He would be more like Q than I would.
And I've already seen it. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. All right, so real quick.
Yep.
I was thinking about... Okay, so they had mentioned the theory that possibly Ira had a relationship with Maury.
Mm.
And we know that Maury spent time raising both Birdie and Fern. I think the length of time depends on how long she was with them. Or their height. I think she not only stretches time, but she stretches the people. Because Birdie's taller than Ollie, Fern's taller than both of them. Nightmare King's tall, elongated even past that. She was there. Is that why they're so stretched out?
The longer they're in her presence, the more hag-like they become.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? I buy that.
That was just a thought I had as I was when we met Ollie and there, he's talking.
Well, and the big thing, mathematical-wise, with Fern, is they ask Ollie how long ago was that you met, because they get the how did you meet story.
Yeah.
The romance. He said about 12 years. And that Fern was a little girl when they left her.
Yeah. They said 9-ish.
Yeah. And I got the feeling between 6 and 9.
Yeah.
Was my feeling. Because they've been gone for 6 years.
Yeah.
So if you do the math, she was 6 when they left her.
Well, he said she was about 9. So 8 or 9. Because even Travis goes, so she was 14, so you think she should be 14?
Yeah. But I think they're wrong.
Okay.
Because he said that they met about 12 years ago. Fern is 112. That's important.
Okay.
Because Maury had her for a century. That was her price.
Why? So why does Fern think it's only 90 years?
Well, because Fern doesn't really know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's Fern trying to do math herself. But
And 90 to
112 is 22.
Yeah.
Which doesn't add up either. But if she kept her for a century, which tends to be that nice round fey number.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's the period on the end of my thought, Rose.
Yep.
They paid her 100 years for that thing.
Yep. For that little green gem.
Yep.
All right. So, and that lends credence to Ira having not necessarily dating, but some kind of relationship connection to Maury.
Yeah.
The other part is when they're talking about stuff, Ollie mentions an elven man with long silver hair, blue and gray robes, with a cane. And that both fits an NPC in Campaign 2 and an NPC in Campaign 1. Campaign 2, Lunas the Left of the Cerberus Assembly.
Yeah.
Very specifically, episode 88 of Campaign 2 describes him exactly the same. Almost exactly. Like the blue-gray robes, the cane, the long silvery hair.
Okay.
It fits woman in Campaign 1, which ties into the attack on the Ashari. And that's Corin, Keyleth's father. The description that Ollie gave could equally fit either Ludnus or Corin.
See, and I was thinking you were going to go to the high priest of the Platinum Dragon in Campaign 1.
Mm. Was he an elf?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's 3 people NPCs from the past 2 campaigns.
And the thing is, if it's him, because he was sort of the background bad guy to the one shot that you ran.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because we talked about how, how he behaved around the Horn of Orcus.
Yeah,
was sus. If he is sort of the big boss in Vasselheim and in charge of these assassins keeping these 2 hidden gods hidden.
Yeah.
That also sort of...
Yeah. So it all fits. Any one of them could fit.
Yeah. And I think, well, we don't know enough about
Corin is the
twins.
Least likely.
Yeah.
Unless Keyleth is also ruined this point. Because then he's in the same boat as Birdie and Ollie. He's in the same boat as Imogen's mom. But we don't have any evidence to that. Why not all 3? Because they described one individual. I mean, all 3 could be involved somehow, yes. But we're talking about the specific person that Ollie described. That he had interaction with.
Lewdness may be too old.
Well,
Depending on when the Divine Gate actually went up and when Ruidus appeared and when he was born.
yeah, I mean, maybe, but, I mean, what do we know about him? He's, like, casualties are not a thing. People are just means to an end to him.
And he is from the Uthadurn Elves.
He's from the Uthadurn Elves. He's, you know, we
An Arcanist.
always portrayed the war as being Essex's fault, but Lewdness had just as much a hand in that as he did.
It's fair.
And given the fact that he did that with the war, and he knew what was going on with Trent and didn't shut it down, and the Uthadurn background, that he sucks at risk assessment. So trying to tap into this is totally in his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
For a long-lived elf arcanist, he sucks at risk assessment. You can't convince me otherwise. You'll have an easier time convincing me that Ford or Chetney are not evil.
Fair.
And of course, yeah, with that theory that I 100% subscribe to that you came up with about, you know, it being Vasheim and keeping the lid on the dead gods, because, you know, that's what you do in religion, is you vilify or suppress all previous
heretical
gods. You know.
Yep. Those are heretical. And lewdness was a huge part of the Empire's efforts at that.
Yeah.
That's sort of his primary focus.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, who was it? Who is it?
What if Keyleth's red hair is a sign of her being Ruidus born?
I mean, it could be. And I'm not saying she isn't. I'm just saying we have nothing that, you know, other than conjecture like that.
Well, and it's funny because Ashley's the one that thought of that.
Yeah.
And just sort of threw it out. What was your wind lady's name? Is she in these books?
Yeah.
And they didn't roll well enough on the investigation check. And Matt sort of implied that they didn't go far enough forward in time, the book that they had.
Yeah. So, I mean...
And Ruidus born are just bound for greatness. Good or bad.
Yeah.
Which is also why I say I think all of the gods are there. And the conflict that they were waging on Exandria, they've been waging on Ruidus since the gate went up.
I mean, that could very well be, you know.
And basically, that might also be where the afterlife is. And also, remember, Caramon and Tasselhoff go to the moon as well.
Yeah. And he is a big Dragonlance fan, Matt.
Yeah.
So, and Ashley too.
Yeah.
I say Ashley because she's playing a Kender. There are certain hills I will die on. Travis likes evil characters. Ashley is currently playing a Kender.
Fair enough.
I suck at death saves.
Yeah, this episode was also kind of weird because, like, other than the encounter, so much of it felt like a repeat or a recap.
Yeah.
I guess I want to like
it was very much what you thought was going to be condensed into just before the break. Took the whole episode. Because you didn't think there was going to be the encounter.
Yeah.
And I think if there hadn't been the encounter, it would have been done by break.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think going forward, they are going to. They've now been presented with evidence and a question. And that is where Act 2 begins. So I think if we don't level up at the beginning of the episode, we will level up at the end of next episode.
I think it's going to be the end, because I think if it was the beginning, he would have had him do it before, and they usually put that out on Twitter, the hit point dice.
Well, they do that because he forgets to do it at the end.
Yeah. But there have been times where he's like, I didn't say this, but we leveled up. This is what people got.
I think...
And the one encounter, I mean, yeah, we had a bunch of lore dumps recently, which I 100% agree should count towards, leveling up. But I just feel it's going to be the end of the episode. I think we're going to get back.
Well, we have to deal with the fallout of the burden of knowledge that they have.
It's basically going to be what you thought the second half of the episode would be coming back, and then it will be next episode, and then they will level up. So it'll still be story-wise where you thought it would be. They just stretched it out over 2 episodes instead of having it in 1 episode. That's my feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, Rose, the Paragon's call either needs to be seen or, as you alluded to, totally forgotten.
Yes.
But I think, and maybe confronting Otahan is part of getting that additional information.
Yeah.
Of where are the lines being drawn? Is she trying to do something with the ley lines? That kind of thing. So, henchmen and bad guys, when placed before players, will inevitably seem pathetic. I have designed some pretty nasty bad guys, nasty monsters that you guys are gonna be lucky to get out with your lives, and they're dead almost immediately. The fight is over before it began, much like Imogen did in this encounter.
Yeah.
Blow up the thing's leg, take out their main gun, potentially kill everyone up there. Job's done. And then the blindness, deafness was just the cherry on top.
Yeah.
And the sleep.
And the other thing I want is for if we get a mansion, it to be Laudna, because I want a cottagecore haunted house for the mansion. All the people that were up in the sun tree are the servants.
They're all dead rats, as opposed to Caleb's cats.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's more questions. Or more I shouldn't say more questions. There's more information that we do need, I think, probably. And confronting Otahan is part of that. And then, Imogen's mother can give her the Yoda line. know that all of what you need.
Yeah. And just to get everyone thinking for moving forward, the Critical Role Company is very selective about what they copyright. And just this past week, since the last episode, they copywrote the term candela obscura. It reminds me of camera obscura, but I'm not sure what that is going to be or mean. It may have nothing to do with the campaign. It may be a new board game from Darrington Press. But if they're copywriting it, then it's something specific. You know what I mean?
I think that's what that telescope is. I think that's what the telescope is called.
Okay.
Because Kindle is an angelic term.
See, and it's almost like candle, but with an A at the end. Candela.
I'm not sure of the spelling. And spellings change through translations.
True.
And if it's Latin, it probably is a C because Latin didn't have a K. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would make sense to show what's in, obscura.
Yeah. Well, and also to reveal.
Yeah.
So it is revealing the heavenly body, basically, or a celestial body. Celestial in the sense of Mount Celestia.
Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, I think it is probably the telescope.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was going to be something, whatever it is, that gets them to the moon.
Maybe, but that has connotations of an avatar-like transference, as opposed to you're going there. Because technically, like we talked about, if you have teleport, you could target the moon.
Yeah.
As your target where you want to go. Now, maybe the gate around Ruidus prevents teleportation in or out. But
I mean, if it is avatar-ish, it may allow Imogen to take everyone with her through the dream.
Could we get a Happy Fun Ball episode on Ruidus?
Perhaps.
Or sort of a bottle episode? Yeah, interesting. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Full Metal Alchemist really ramps up after Interlude Party. Episode 23, I think. A little over a third of the way through. And that's a sort of a recap episode from a different point of view.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what this one felt like.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Visit a Mysterious City is kind of a trope in
it's, yeah,
D&D.
that's sort of the name of the game, as it were. Out of the Abyss,
Call
Tomb
it
of
another
Annihilation, yeah, so much. But we will have to wait and see if we're right about the level up and see what happens with Paragon's Call next week, and we will be here to talk about it. Not guys.